Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, December 14th. And if you would please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hopefully someday we'll have some of our young friends back to help lead us in the pledge.
That would be great. It's amazing the things that you miss, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. All right, superintendent's comments.
Simply missing live instruction and having kids back, and we're hopeful that that will return at some point, but until then, we have both the Deputy Superintendent for Instruction and the Deputy Superintendent for Operations. Since we only have one meeting this month, we're going to combine them, and we'll start with Mr. Dilly. And Mr. Dilly, I know that you have some information to share with the board visually, and I gave you screen sharing capabilities.
Yes, thank you for that. Good evening, board. I'm pleased this evening to present you several updates with some information that my team has been working on. And the first of those is just an update on the learning management system. I wanted to share with you what we've been doing up to this point. We've been currently reviewing 3 learning management systems. The reason we're looking at 3 is there are only 3 that West Virginia Department of Ed has identified with the data integration abilities to work with WEBIS, and that's going to be an integral part in moving forward. And so what our hope is in the future, as we continue to explore those and try to understand what they can offer us, is we are building a selection rubric for an RFP. And so once we complete that work, we will come back to you all for permission to post an RFP to work or to go out and seek an LMS to support our one-to-one initiative that we've been working on. Secondly, what I wanted to share with you this evening, obviously the pandemic has prompted many changes to education and has forced students and caregivers to engage with education in many new ways. Education success relies on 3 primary factors to the school, the student, and the caregiver. It is when all 3 are in alignment that students have the greatest opportunity to succeed. As wish we could address all of the aspects associated, we can only focus on those things that we have the ability to control within the school. And so one of the things that we've been doing is looking at one of the primary challenges facing not only our county, but all of the counties across the nation right now, and that is the alarming number of students earning a failing grade in the first 9 weeks. And so I wanted to share with you this evening several things that our team has put together, and I want to send out a quick shout out to Mrs. Wolf, Dr. Rowan, and Dr. Ebersol for their work on putting this information together. And if I've done my job correctly here, you should be seeing a chart here in front of you with a brief exploration or comparison of the 2021 failure rates for the first 9 weeks in comparison to the 2019-20 total comparison chart. So there is a little bit of difference because the 19-20 data is looking at the entire school year, whereas the 2021 failure rate is only looking at the first 9 weeks. And as expected, we would see that those rates are increasing as we go up into the secondary levels. That is a pretty common thing. The problem that we are seeing is that the rates or the numbers that we're looking at are about 1.25 times higher than we would traditionally see in a normal year. So that is something we're going to be looking at. But one of the things that we did find interesting, as you can see from the pie charts below here, is that our rates of percentages of Fs going to different programmatic levels ended up being about the same. This year, for the first 9 weeks, we see about 6%, and we saw that same 6% in the last year. And so we want to also see that there's in the 6th through 8th, we see 35%, and we see about 38% this first 9 weeks. So these comparisons are fairly similar in their the way they turned out for us. So I can shift screens here for you all.
While you're doing that, Mr. Dilly, while you're doing that, I want to clarify for the board and for the public, when we say failure, because you've seen these statistics from other school systems as well, we counted if you had one F. If you had a single F, so in making comparisons to some other systems, some of you may have seen the Fairfax report that came out in the Washington Post. Different systems use different criteria. They used 2 or more Fs. So we said if you're failing anything at all and have an F, we're going to count that as a failure and that we need to remediate it, which is a higher standard than several folks have had. So I just want to be clear if you're looking at comparisons. My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Dilly.
No, that's a very important point, so I appreciate you sharing that out. As you've shared, it's one S too many S in our book, so that's why we're focusing on such a high level. Wanted to kind of share here too, just some interesting outcomes of some of this, and it's probably a little bit challenging for you to see there on the screen, but hopefully you can see this. We're seeing obviously a significant increase in the secondary for our virtual students comparison to our in-person. So that's something that we know that we need to address, is the difference between our in-person performance versus those students that are performing virtually. We see a significant increase there, and so we want to really look at what's causing that and what we can do to try to address those particular aspects. And so one of the other things that we did is we also broke this data down, and just to kind of highlight a few of the interesting points that we did find in looking at additional demographics as we dove into this data additionally, was that we did not see a significant difference in our students receiving EL services. We actually saw one's 8% and one's 9%, so they were performing about the same whether they were in person or virtual. So that was kind of a positive. We also saw that same trend in our Hispanic students, which we thought was an interesting outcome. But I think one of the more interesting things that we pointed out and we did discover when looking at this data is that the difference between male and female. What we found is that the actual males were doing a little bit better virtually than they were performing in person. So we want to dig into that a little bit further and try to understand what that perspective is generating. And so the vice versa, with the girls performing a little more stronger in person versus outside of that. So it was kind of an interesting finding as we continue to dig through this, and our intention is to provide this data to our schools to begin to break down further and try to understand specifically what it means as building a response to our pathways to recovery, as I've been calling it, for our students that have not been performing up to the standards that we would hope for them. And one of the very important steps that we did in looking at that is trying to accommodate those students that have requests to change placements. And hopefully up in front of the screen you can see now is a chart that highlights all of the requests that we received. Some of those requests were from moving in person to virtual, and we had a total of students, 109 students that requested. We were able to support 94 of their requests, relating to 86% of their requests being met. But much more largely, as we would have anticipated, we had 658 persons requesting to move from virtual to in-person. And so from that, we were able to support 477 requests, and that would equal 73%. So nearly 3/4 of the requests to move back to in-person, we were able to support. So I think that's a really positive step in the regard of supporting our students' success in moving forward to try to help manage the many folks that are struggling with the virtual platform. So I'm going to make sure I didn't miss anything here in my notes real quickly for you all this evening. So one of the things that we are going to be following up with this as well, and is going on currently, and I want to try to endorse because we're still wanting to try to get as much input as possible, is we're wanting to try to make sure parents do complete the survey, because one of the things that we know that is very important to them is the amount of time with their teacher, whether it's increasing the in-person time or increasing the time that they actually have live instruction going on the camera. So we want to make sure that in the virtual platform or in person that we create those opportunities the best we can. And we're going to continue to dig into this and try to move forward in a positive direction for our system. And I'm excited about what we could accomplish. We wish we could have accommodated all of the requests, but obviously there are limitations to space and size concerns related to safety, and then just the scheduling aspects of trying to make these changes occur this late in the school year. But we appreciate the work that our schools have done, because those schedule changes and accommodations and efforts that they've made have been very important, and will be very important for us to turn some of the concerns surrounding the failure rates around. So we think we have some really positive things working in the right direction, but we know we have some work ahead of us as well. Brings me to a conclusion this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dilly, and I certainly do have to give a shout out to the team. They have done an incredible job with the amount of data that they're churning out to be very targeted with the approaches that we have for increasing our pass rates for second semester. We've taken all of the feedback from our staff and we put out some of the changes for second semester, and now we'll be doing the same with the feedback from the parents and the principals meeting tomorrow. So certainly we never like to say that we're perfect. We're always evolving towards better, but this type of practice and holding ourselves accountable is how we get there. So they've done a fantastic job. They really have.
Thank you very much for that. That's, you need to know where you are in order to figure out where you want to be, so, or how to get there. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much this evening.
Ms. White, is it your turn?
Yes, it is. Good evening, everyone. I want to echo the sentiments of congratulating Dr. Rowan and Mrs. Kelly Wolf on a job well done. They have kind of dual roles because they support instruction and they're kind of based in operations. So they do an amazing job and they get it all finished, and we appreciate it greatly. So I'll start with the technology update in light of supporting instruction and operations and our staff and students. We're very honored to do so. We do have 100 hotspots that were delivered to students to provide internet in their homes so that they can continue learning during remote learning. We have 100 more on the way. Our help desk is well underway. It's up and running. And during the windows of time, which are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from Monday and Friday from 9 to 11, and Wednesday from 1 to 3, parents and students are able to call in. And I know Dr. Rowan was sharing with me today that she does have students, even in elementary, that call in and I need help getting on a Zoom, and they're happy to help the students. So I'm very tickled to hear that students are even calling to get some help with their remote learning. The phone number, if anyone is on the call and would like it, is 304-728-9054. So I just want to provide that number to folks so they know how to call the technology help desk. They can also find it on our website, jcswv.org. Tech is also working, as Sean said, to support learning management systems. And as part of all of our technology goals, we have made some movement with creating a K2 committee. Members were invited to that committee, and our kickoff meeting will be January 4th with a roundtable discussion. Research will continue in January, and then we hope to bring something to the school board in April at the second meeting. So we are achieving that goal, taking a chunk off of it to achieve the goal. I'm very pleased to announce that. Child nutrition and transportation departments are forming a partnership, and I shouldn't say forming. They have had a partnership since March, packing food, distributing food. They've just become operations, and they have worked seamlessly and beautifully together to provide any student that needs food in Jefferson County. And they're unsung heroes because We do school distribution sites, and we recognize and honor that not all students can get to a site. And our unsung heroes have worked behind the scenes to ensure that if parents or families have needed a porch pickup, or they needed help or a meeting place, that we've made those things happen. So we're very excited to formalize that process. We're going to begin in the new year, when we're remote learning, bus stop deliveries. Bus drivers for a few weeks have been calling parents, and they've been doing a beautiful job checking in while we're remote on families of bus riders. And so in doing that, they have asked, how many of you would like food delivered? And parents have expressed needs for varieties of reasons. Some of them have live lessons going on during the time we're distributing food, and during our work hours is when we're able to provide it. So we want to ensure that if we can get closer to homes for those that need it, that we make that available. Virtual food will continue weekly in school zones. We will continue supporting school sites weekly, Tuesdays from 8:30 to 10:30. And over the holiday, we're going to deliver next week a couple of weeks of our multi-day meal packs, so that during the Christmas break, we've provided enough food to students. Schools will also have the opportunity, and as they have been doing, to identify those that don't ride buses, because we're happy to bring food to anyone's nearest bus stop. So schools and Hans Vogel will help us get that word out as we begin the new year. We do want to let people know that due to inclement weather, there may be some Tuesdays where we have to shift our days if it's too bad for buses to run. We will announce that very well and advertise it through Mr. Fogel, through our website, through robocalls. In addition, this Tuesday to delivering food, we're also going to warn the children. We have the shoe and coat fund, and this year each school has been given an allocation to keep the clothing that they need for students in their school and to be able to purchase that. We have some clothing on hand, so tomorrow, along with food, we'll be passing out gloves, scarves, mittens, hats, coats. And if we don't have something on hand, schools are also going to pass out with food tomorrow a request form where parents can request what they have and what they need so that we can then provide it for them. So bus drivers will help support that effort in the school zones along with the cooks, and they've been all doing a great job with the food. In maintenance, we do have our SBA project for TA Lowry that will take place this summer. We're still on pace to make that project happen, and we're up in the process to hiring a contractor. For the bond, I want to share with you this evening the project board. We have a rough timeline for projects to begin, and I want to let you know that this has been a 3-year process, and we're very proud to finally see it come to fruition. We started with committee meetings. We had 2 public input meetings where there were posters that were put up. We shared out all of the committee recommendations. We asked for feedback on those. We had the meetings in April 11th of 2018 and May 2nd, 2018. There were 4 meetings in 2019 regarding the Comprehensive Educational Facilities Plan, and our projects can fall in that plan. And then we also held a virtual town hall, as you remember, this June 11th, 2020. All told, this has been a 3-year process to get to this point, and we're very excited to take the next 3 years to make all of our projects become a reality for Jefferson County schools. So with that being said, we will unveil our project timeline. At the very top, we want a project that I know is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and one that we feel we can get done quickly, and I'm highlighting it over here, and that is the Jefferson High School turf field. Brandon, Kate, and I have already begun some work on that project, and we're excited to get started. We would like to begin the planning process for a lot of these bond projects for summer 2020 now, so that we're assured to have contracts and materials for them. So we'll be talking to the board about that in the near future. The CW Shipley awning is on our project list for the summer. We have several roof projects, a Blue Ridge campus brick repair project, HVAC units. We're gonna be looking at some tennis courts, some bleacher replacements. We'll begin the process of converting our water fountains to bottle fill stations, complete some asphalt track repairs, and then finally, some of our schools will replace carpet with tile. We're gonna do this as a phase-in type of project, as there's only so much carpet we can replace with tile in a summer, so we're gonna spread that out a little bit. As we go down to fall 2021, we continue with some projects. And I know we have the schools in there as fall of 2021. We'll actually be getting that process with SBA in January, and we'll be working with the SBA in April to complete a needs project that we'd like to see funded for both of those schools. So our timeline goes all the way down, and we welcome the board's feedback about our timeline and about our projects, and we look forward to working with you on those. And that's how we'll be sharing with the public our projects. We'll be able to share links from our website so that they can track our progress, they can see our timelines, and it's a very transparent way for us to communicate with all of our stakeholders. That's my update for this evening.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions for either Mr. Dilly or Ms. White?
I would just say that when I went searching for some information, because I knew we had looked into turf and done different things for years at Jefferson High School, and I found a bunch of old emails and whatnot. Mr. Cable will probably remember, he was on the board at the time, and it was 2010 that we had the athletic complex committee at Jefferson High School. We worked with Mr. Brown, who was then the AD there. We had a committee formed. We were trying to raise funds for turf. We had met with different companies. We had all the information, and I looked back and I thought, I cannot believe, it was 2010. So it's pretty exciting anyway, I know for the community, but as well for me personally, I'm very excited for Jefferson High School to be able to see that to come to fruition after all these years.
You're dating yourself because
I
I bet
know.
you were not the player.
No, that would be my child.
I agree, it's
Thanks for
very
putting
exciting
that out.
story, and we have many very exciting projects
Yes.
on our list.
Oh my gosh, yes, that list is great. Thank you.
It is.
Well, and I would, and again, not that they would tell you this, but Joyce White both examined and went through and reviewed different programs, brought them to JLT, found that program, populated those lists herself. We haven't even had the training yet. And each one of those allows you to assign subtasks out to other various members of the organization. And the public will be able to follow along step by step, and you could click on every one of them and see whose responsibility it is, what timeline they had, and when they get it done. So it's an excellent step forward in transparency on the amount of work that we're doing. And again, she wouldn't say this, but both setting up those locations and distributions. We've been without a school nutrition coordinator for nearly a month now, since our previous coordinator resigned, and she's been filling that role as well. So thank you very much for all your hard work. I appreciate it.
You're
Do
very
we-
welcome, my pleasure.
Do we have any projects we're gonna attempt to start on this spring?
I can start that turf field when we have money. We need to start the planning process now, Mark, which is, why I highlight some of those. I think that if we could get some roof contractors and, certainly, we've got a civil engineer ready to go for that field, so that field is installed correctly. That's a very important part of our planning process. So, when you're ready, we're ready.
How
We
about
can
some
make
of
it
the,
happen.
how about some of the rooms where we're going from carpet to tile? Can we, if we're not back in school, can we get started on some of them?
With money, we can get started on anything, yes. And the thing about that, Mark, you might be able to do select rooms and start on those. You'd want to plan out a week at a time because that's when we know we're on remote. It might be a little problematic trying to get a contractor because we know on Saturday night and then they'd want to start Monday. We'd have to find someone with a little flexibility. We're certainly willing to get out there and look and to start anything that we can.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, and real
And I'll-
quick,
Welcome.
can you just say, we just want to say, or I just want to say, and the community I know we've heard a lot from, thank you for how quickly you guys are moving on Wildwood, and that looks amazing back there, and it's fun as well to see that coming to fruition, so thank you.
Yes, they have broken ground, and they have made some steady progress back there.
And shout out to Alan Lane, who's been very communicative with us and has been working with us very well and making sure that he follows the contract, and he's made a commitment and he's doing everything that he can to get it done and get it done right. So thank you to him.
Absolutely. And it looks great so far. It's very well done.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Dilly a question real quick? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Mr. Dilly, do we have, as far as our online, have we changed any of our expectations for online or anything that we feel like we have to move towards with the expectation of not having a failing grade, or if we do, you have to come back in, or how are we, do we have anything different there? As far as
Yes.
cameras on, cameras off, you must participate in chat.
Yeah, one of the things that we are looking at, attempting to try to request those students that are failing would be required to show up on camera during the class time, and we're hoping that that additional time will improve their outcomes, because we know that that's what's enabling many of these kids, the ones that are actually participating and showing up during the live sessions, are allowing them to be more successful. So that's one of the things that we are planning on adopting for second semester. And then we're also going to be talking to our principals tomorrow about establishing some minimums as far as the amount of live instruction taking place for our district. Many of our schools have already established some different standards and expectations, but we're hoping to unify those a little bit in our discussions tomorrow, as well as address any shortcomings that we've identified. And we're also looking at just isolating any problem spots that we can address those individual needs as well. But we know that the majority of our folks are doing a fantastic job, and so we just want to be pretty strategic about how we support those that are needing to push forward and continuing to encourage those that are doing a fantastic job for us right now.
If you saw the video that we put out for JVA families, where we outlined what we were doing versus, we are really trying to keep that triad concept. Kids have to give us something and they have to change some behaviors. Parents have to give us something and they have to change some behaviors, and teachers have to give us something and they have to change some behaviors. The levers that we have on these two folks are more limited, and we'd like to apply them without hurting kids. As you saw in there, one of the biggest things is changing our attendance requirements, because work completion is not mastery. We have kids who are just, they're not attending the classes, and then they may be turning something in, but it's not showing any mastery. They're just signing their name and getting it in. So for those, that will trigger some consequences for their parents if they continually fail to do that. Despite a great deal of communication and feedback from us. So it's just accountability on all three of those sides. So And if we get something else from the parents in this survey that we haven't done yet, we'll add that to the continuous improvement on those.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Moving on, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held November 30th, 2020?
Osborne, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any discussion or question? I had one issue, and that was just that on the last page, when it was talking about the bond, it shouldn't be April, it should be March when the bonds are issued. If I remember the timeline correctly that they presented. So is there a motion to accept the amended minutes?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the meeting held November 30th, 2020?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, citizens' comments, Ms. Harner, we don't have any this evening? All right, the consent agenda. Any?
Go right ahead, Ms. Lauren.
Right, good evening. We have the HR consent agenda for you to approve this evening for agenda item A and B. On the human resources consent agenda, we have one just kind of clarification on line 3 for Eric Chrisman to identify that he was the assistant girls track coach. And then on line 18, we have a deletion for an appointment to a long-term sub position. And those were the only changes to the posted agenda. And we, just to clarify the difference between appoint and approve, appoint is used when we're hiring somebody full-time, including off of the sub list. And then approve is basically any other action that is outside of hiring full-time. That would include like leave of absences, temporary positions, temporary assignments, extracurriculars, and leave of absences. And that is the consent agenda for this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Loring. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Any question or discussion?
I have a question, Ms. Loring. So for appointing, it's because we're using someone that, or appointing someone that we already have in our system, if you will, as an employee. But does that mean that the position was already there too and we're just refilling? It's not a new position added to the budget, correct?
Right, it's either appointing somebody into a full-time capacity already in the system, or that's the status that we use when we're hiring somebody directly from the applicant pool. So all of your full-time positions, administrative positions, those are all going to be in appoint status.
But
Right.
you are
But
correct.
they're not new positions.
Not new
That's
positions.
correct. They're not new positions. They're already in the budget and in the system.
Okay. And I get, my question is as well, with these positions, you know, when I'm looking down the list here, as we're heading into personnel season, if you will, and knowing what our numbers are for students, knowing between transportation, between, you know, some of the positions listed here, as well as looking at what is our rate for, frankly, student dropout. Are we losing kids virtually? Whatever the case may be, are we looking even now at some of these numbers to make sure that we don't then have to turn around and end up having to transfer people here and there, riff a position here or there?
Yes, we are cognizant of that. The appoint positions that we have right now are personnel in positions where those individuals need to be. So they're, whether somebody's retired, and those students need by code that person actively in that role at this point in time.
Okay. All right, thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, no unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Action on approval of McCormick grant recommendations for fiscal year 2021.
Yes, good evening. I think we have Mrs. Schwartz on here this evening that's going to go ahead and present the information surrounding the McCormick grant. Mrs. Schwartz, if you want to unmute yourself, we get you started.
All right, well, good evening. We met on November the 10th. Our committee of Major Sudan, Mrs. Fitzgerald, Michael Janey, Amy Vickers, myself, Lori Ogden, and Jennifer Conway. And we had $61,912.44 left over from the spring 2021 school year. And we had 7 grants. And of those, there was $96,240 requested. So you should have in your possession the listing. So Hannah Kelvington for $4,000, show choir costumes for spring competition, and it's recommended in full. And I did talk with her because there was a question after the governor shut down that kind of stuff. They're not under the band directive. They're still going to have competitions remotely, so they would still need the costumes. Miss Cromer and Mr. English both wanted Chromebooks, and since the county's going 1-to-1, we decided McCormick should just kind of stay out of the fray until all that's settled. And then if need be for school years, we could revisit such grants in spring 2021 for the 21 and 22 school year. Hannah Kellington, Megan Garland, and Krista Crawford, $5,510 for an auditorium lift. We recommended Megan Garland and Dawn Murphy $3,490 for a digital theater plus, which is a digital program for theater for virtual and remote students now, and we recommend that in full. Mr. Lynch, $5,500 for 2021 field show custom arrangement. We recommended that in full. And since we had money left over, we had $27,900 and some change left over, we decided to, since Mr. English had another grant there for 10 ViewSonic mounts and software, to up that by 18 more, so 28. And then that would bring us to $61,890, leaving $22.44 remaining. And then we did have one other piece of business. Our treasurer made an error. It was very slight, but apparently there's a place called Go for Sport online that we ordered equipment from for one of the grants from the spring. And when she went to pay it, she paid it through Go for Portal, which is not affiliated with Go for Sport. So in trying to get all of that situated, Go for Portal did refund the payment to the credit card. However, they were charged $40 in fees by PayPal and requested a refund. So there's evidently some interest, and I don't know the exact amount, but it's a good bit interest that is made on the money when it's at the Bank of Charlestown, and so we voted to just pay the $40 out of that interest. So, interest money. That's all.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the McCormick grant recommendations?
I'd like to say it first, if it's okay with you. I'm gonna recuse myself because if I I sat on this committee, so I don't feel like I should also vote for that, so I'm gonna recuse myself from the vote.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve McCormick grant recommendations?
So move, Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cable. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the McCormick grant recommendations?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Action on approval to place health and wellness instructional materials on review for grades 6 through 12.
Yes, this evening we're asking the board permission to post some information out for public view, and I want to go ahead and provide the board a little bit of context this evening. We do have with us this evening Mr. Silver and Mrs. Farrow, also available as members of the committee. Part of this is stemming from some work, and I'm going to quickly share my screen here just to kind of back up. As you can see, this is actually some work that was significantly delayed due to the pandemic, and so they're just attempting to try to conclude the adoption process for the health and PE programming. So back in January 23rd of 2019, started this process, and that moved forward through a school-based presentation that occurred from February 4th through March 10th, and then on March 18th, there was a process to try to select a final choice, and those processes occur as they do for all the programs through a number of collaborations with the Department of Ed as well as other districts and within our own district's folks. And so what had occurred was right about March, when the process to bring this forward to the board for your review and comments and then for making it available for the public, we shut down obviously with the pandemic's impact, and so this was delayed and postponed until this evening. And so what we're asking of you this evening is to basically move forward with this step and the next step towards adopting the materials that the selection committee has made available. And again, those folks are here this evening for your access to ask questions or get clarity from.
All right, thank you. Let's first get a motion on the floor to approve the health and wellness instructional materials on review.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Any questions or discussion?
How is this different than what we have currently, or what, or is it gonna take us in a different direction, or what are we thinking in regards to that?
I will defer to Mr. Silver and Ms. Farrow if they can share some of the insights from their committee selection, because I wasn't a part directly with that at the time.
Absolutely. So, obviously our adoption cycle was up, and so we are starting our new adoption, which is for the next 6 years. And I do know that 3 of my committee members, I know for sure, are on the call tonight. And so they took a look at this new textbook, and it provides them with a lot of opportunity for their students that they were impressed with. And so any of my health teachers that are on the call tonight, if you don't mind just speaking on exactly what you saw as benefits and why you chose this selection.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Jennifer Colbert, one of the parts that they included in this textbook was the opioid prevention and vaping. So those were things that we had to pull outside, but in this textbook, they update their resources every 6 months online. So they provide it, and it's appropriate for the middle school. I'm in the middle school, so when I looked at the content, it was definitely appropriate for grades 6 through 8.
Thank you very much. And what about for virtual students? I know in the past, we have to buy the textbook, but then there's additional, cost associated with having it virtually. I mean, have you looked at doing the textbook and the virtual piece of it, or just the textbook, or?
So according to the notes here that I have from the committee, they actually gave us a standard login for each student. So the login doesn't have to be student specific. So yes, every student will have access to an online edition if you decide to adopt this curriculum.
Thank you. I mean, obviously the world is a different place now than it was back in, last winter when you were looking at these. So I just want to make sure it fits our current world.
Absolutely, and with the online edition, it's actually updated, I believe at least 4 times a year. So a lot of the current trends will be updated as they present themselves.
All right. So, Mr. Dilly, how do you and Ms. Farrow, as well as Mr. Silver, when we're looking at the health curriculum, and we know that we want to do a financial literacy piece, and we want to do this piece, and we want to do that piece, all the different things we're trying to fit in, knowing that we still have to meet certain content standards, have we thought about the possibility of putting some of that in the health curriculum? I mean, I know we've talked about moving things around and doing, how will this maybe affect that, number one? And then number two, every year, the question we get the most and the most, frankly, pain and suffering we get is, I want to test out of health, and it's never, ever, ever positive. So mostly because it's you have to have this website to learn this, and then you got to have this textbook to learn this, and then you have to have this to do this. And we have, those high-flying students that are 4.0 plus students, and they somehow can't pass this health exam, which makes 0 sense. So how is this going to fix that? Those would be my 2 questions.
Okay, I'll speak more to the first one. Maybe Ms. Farrow can speak to the testing out question there, I believe, because she's more directly involved with that. But ultimately, I don't know that there is ever a curriculum, a one-size-fits-all curriculum that we would like to adopt. But as we are having additional conversations about all the different essential skills that are needed by our students, obviously personal finance would be one of those, and we do have some supplementary free resources and training available that could be utilized to supplement along the health, if that's something that we choose to do as a district. Traditionally, you wouldn't see those paired together, but one of the things that I know that the middle school has been trying to do is incorporate additional life skills into their various rotations of activities that they're doing. And so we are having additional conversations about how we can incorporate some of these different skills. But at this point, I don't know that we've landed on anything as an absolute yet, just because so much of our conversations that were starting to take place in the spring were disrupted due to the pandemic, and we're just now feeling like we're getting back to where we can start to have some of those conversations and some of the work that we started and postponed at that point to get further, moving further forward with them. So we know that that's a priority, and so we will continue to try to find places that we can plug that in and make it seamless and work with our folks. But I do have some middle school and high school resources, like I said, that are free, and that working with it's Next Gen Personal Finance, who's has been a great discussion partner, and I've been following along with them for the last several months, and we're excited about the free opportunities they bring, along with free professional development, because their goal is to make sure that the modules and things that they're trading and presenting, and hopefully down the road we will be combining some of that work with some of the current work we're doing with the Education Alliance. And so as that gets a little further developed, we'll be having more conversations with you all as a board to try to look at next steps and how we can incorporate that completely. So I know that's not a complete answer, but it's an honest answer at this point. We're working on some different places, but we have to figure out where that makes the most sense to plug it in at this point. Ms. Farrow, I don't know if you can speak to Ms. Ogden's second question about the testing component.
Well, the testing out of health is definitely one of our very most popular courses that students address and want to sign out or to test out of. And I have started to work with Apex, which is a program that we use for credit recovery, and we were already paying for it. When I started in this position, when I did some homework, I realized, and I looked at the old health tests that had been created, and there was a lot of subjective, I guess, parts of that test that some people had some disagreements with. And so what I did is I moved it to this platform that our county was already paying for, taking away that subjective nature, but covering all the standards, because the Apex does align with all the West Virginia College and Career Readiness standards for our classes. So we use that as our testing out portion for every subject that we offer. So that keeps it consistent, takes away from the subjectivity. It's graded on the spot, so you don't have teachers, some teachers grading this short answer and that short answer and having different opinions on the points and the scale. So it's all done electronically by our Apex platform. So that has been a positive. Also, with the students doing it during the normal school year, we provide the standards, we provide the online health textbook or a hardback textbook. It is a full year that they cover, and I can't stress that, some of that stuff is not easy. I mean, the muscles, the bones, the CPR, the stuff that's required. And, I met with our health teachers to discuss, and listen to them and got their input on how we should move forward with this testing out process. And we usually have a few students a year that successfully score an 80% or higher to test out of health. Not a large number pass. But I've reached out to other districts and they had the same thing to say. Either they no longer offer testing out, or they said very, very, very few students ever pass for testing out. So, but if any of my health teachers want to speak up, I know they feel very passionately about their subject and the value that comes with the standards and what the students learn by being involved and actually being in person in the class and interacting with group projects and, some of those discussions that are often hard to have around the dinner table. So I do think there is a lot of value and merit with their curriculum and being in person. And do you guys want to say anything tonight? I know you're here and Mrs. Brown, I think you're muted.
It is, the subject matter is difficult. The muscles, the bones, a lot of the diseases and disorders is confusing for the kids, but it's part of the CSOs. And a lot of the things that we do in class, we have a lot of tricks and a lot of things that we can help with the way that the kids learn that they don't get when they just have a study guide and a book to go home and test. And a lot of the games or the group work that we teach, we can, help in class, but when they just go home on their own with a study guide, it's hard for them to learn the harder material. And so, it's difficult for them to learn. Some of the, we're on mental disorders right now in our class, and a lot of it's is difficult for some of the kids to learn. Some of the mental disorders and getting them confused with others. So it's hard, and some of the kids sometimes think, oh, it's just health. I really don't have to put a lot of time into it, and they kind of move on. They don't put a lot of time, and some of them do. So a lot of times that's what happens.
If I may tack on to Glenn's comment, with the mental health thing, right now we're, with the stuff we're experiencing, we have an ever-changing field, right? The health field is constantly changing, constantly evolving. We're seeing something now that we haven't seen in 100 years. They're seeing the health curriculum changing around them without seeing it in the classroom through this, an older book. What's our textbook's 6 years old now. We're constantly gaining new information. At this point, we are dealing with mental health in a much more serious fashion than maybe 6 years ago when this book was out. Definitely more so than when I was in school here in Jefferson County. So we're constantly stressing that in class. I know I work pretty closely with Ms. Vickers, Ms. Brown, Ms. Weinbrenner, when it comes to the mental health aspect and the teamwork stuff, because right now, we're giving them skills through research, through projects and things of that nature to solidify this information rather than, like she said, cutting them loose with a book and a study guide and saying, hey, get this test over with and get it, done. We do stress a lot of taking care of yourself. We've been bringing in very accomplished guest speakers. We had one of our students whose mother works in the mental health field. She spoke with our kids. We're trying to make this not your typical health classes maybe it was 15 years ago. It's not all memorization, bones and muscles. It's practical information that beyond the classroom, throughout their lives they're going to deal with. So we figure an up-to-date thing where we're seeing this, the opioid epidemic where we live. We've seen it firsthand hit this area. So having that material would benefit us, would benefit them. Also, if we're talking about up-to-date stuff, the vaping information that we just don't have, that is still coming out and being developed with a curriculum that's pretty broad, but a resource that is constantly updated. I think not only will our students benefit from it, I think our professionals can benefit from it. That's my piece on it.
Thank you very much.
I can,
Go
I
ahead.
can also add that one of the things I liked about the new textbook that when I was looking through it is it takes the information that they're giving the students and then it gives them scenarios so they can apply the skills they've learned to more like modern day scenarios. So we aren't just going through and copying down the definition. We're actually taking the definition and applying it so that I know they understand the concepts.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or discussion about putting it out for public review? All right. All in favor of placing the health and wellness instructional materials on review?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And thank you to all the committee members for taking time out of your evening to join us this evening. We appreciate your time. And all the time it took to get to this point.
Yes.
So we realize that.
A year later, yeah.
So, all right. Request for approval for an RFP to advertise for bids for internet provider services.
Yes, operations has 4 this evening, 3 of which are in the area of technology. And joining us this evening to provide you brief context for the request for approval of these bids are Dr. Rowan and I see Mike Davis on the call. And Mike spearheads just these very efforts that you see with us before RFPs. And I have to brag on Mike a little because he was instrumental in getting our kids connect up in all of our school zones. And he does brilliant work behind the scenes. So because I see him sitting here, and not just when I see him sitting here, but behind his back too, I like to brag about Mike. So if you want to just give us brief context, either Dr. Rowan or Mike, about the internet provider services in the RFP, please.
I will defer to Mike for most of these because he was the great architect in building these, and I thought they were really well written. So I think you'd like to talk about the internet provider.
I think it's pretty clear, Mike, just very briefly.
Yeah, this is just a request for proposal for internet services at the rate we're at now, plus for future proofing as far as if we need to increase bandwidths or anything. We're asking for a 3-year contract with the option of 2 one-year renewals. That tends to drive the price down when we go multi-year like that, and it saves the trouble of having to bid it out more often. It does take into account the fact that we have future facilities in mind.
ask for pricing on those as well, so that when they do come to fruition, we'll already have a locked-in rate and we'll have the ability to add them to our network.
Thank you, Mike. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. Is there a motion to approve putting an RFP out for bids for internet provider services?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. All right. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of putting out the RFP to advertise for bids for the internet providers, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, Ms. White, I think you're back up again for approval for an
Yeah.
RFP to advertise for bids for cellular carrier services.
Right, and it's time again to go out for an RFP for these services. I believe Mike would tell you that it is for 3 years. And if you don't need any context on the cellular services, then we'll await your motion. But if you'd like some context, we can provide it.
All right, let's just go ahead and get a motion on the floor. Is there a motion to approve, to go out for an RFP to advertise for bids for cellular carrier services?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cable. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any question or discussion? All right, all in favor to approve for an RFP to advertise for bids for cellular carrier services, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you. Request for approval for an RFP to advertise for bids for local and long-distance provider services. Ms. White, I assume that's you again?
It's us again. And again, if you don't need any context, we'll await your motion.
All right. Is there a motion to approve for an RFP to advertise for bids for local and long-distance provider services?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cable. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any question or discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the RFP to advertise for bids for local and long-distance provider services, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you. Request for approval for an RFP to advertise for bids for a district copier contract.
It is time to renew the copier contract, and if you remember from March, we delayed that due to pandemic, and we obtained 1-year contract with our current vendor. And so we want to begin now the process so that we can turn our copiers over by June and have a smooth process. We have had input from all the schools, from all the principals, and it is our goal to get all of our copiers under one contract, as they are not currently under one contract. So we'll await your motion.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve for an RFP to advertise for bids for a district copier contract?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cable. Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any question or discussion?
I want to be sure at a school level in particular that we are giving those people what they have had in the past, that we are not changing that.
We are not. They have had input into that. I have written specifications into the RFP, and it includes all the services that they have had and that we've had previously. So they will be getting the same things they've had in the past. Now, some of the schools chose to go over a copier formula and sustain their own through faculty senate monies, and they've all had that choice to again do so, and many of them have selected to do so. So the services they should get should be apples to apples.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion to approve the RFP to advertise for bids for a district copier contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And then I believe we do have an executive session for legal with no action. Is that correct?
Correct, ma'am.
All right, is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bourne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. All in favor of going into executive session for legal with no action anticipated?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much.